Every leader knows that a thriving organization depends on the energy, productivity, and commitment of its people. But few leaders are able to cultivate the employee engagement and performance needed for this level of success. What's the difference? Positive leadership practices. Welcome to the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast with your host, positive work culture expert, Alex Bratty. Ready to harness the power of positive leadership? Let's dive right in.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bratty, and I'm so excited about today's guest because he is an exemplary positive leader who not only walks his talk, but continues to research the most effective ways for all of us to do better and be better. And if you've listened to my show at all, if you know me even tangentially, you know that I am all about the research and the evidence. I've been a researcher for over 20 years. So the minute somebody says research, I am all ears. And so our guest today has a ton of research. We're going to dive into a lot of it. His name is Dr. Orin Davis. And we're going to cover a few of the different areas that he does work in and also researches in, including a concept that is simple yet so powerful. And that concept is called flow. If you're not sure what flow is, don't worry. We're going to get into what it is. And also, most importantly, how you can harness it for yourself and maybe even your team to get better results. So just before we do that, though, let me tell you a little bit about him. Orin Davis earned his first doctorate in positive psychology and is a self-actualization engineer who enables people to do and be their best. He consults for companies from startups to multinationals on hiring strategies, culture, innovation, diversity, equity, inclusion, and employee well-being, and coaches people at all levels on building self-knowledge and developing personal growth trajectories. As the principal investigator of the Quality of Life Laboratory, he conducts research on flow, creativity, hypnosis, and mentoring. Dr. Davis also serves as a professor of creativity and innovation, entrepreneurship, business, and psychology at SUNY, Buffalo State College, and gives workshops and lectures globally about human capital, creativity and innovation, and positive psychology. He's also a startup advisor who helps early stage companies enhance their value propositions, pitches, culture, and human capital. And he writes and speaks avidly about human capital, creativity and innovation, and positive psychology. So you might have got the message there. This guy is all about positive psychology and creativity and innovation. And we are going to dive in and get lots of his expertise. And I'm so excited. So without further ado, welcome, Orin. It is so wonderful to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Alex. This seems like such a fun show to be on. So I'm really, really excited.
Oh, I'm glad. And you know what? We will make it fun. So I'm glad that it seems that way. And is my promise to you that we will make it fun today. Awesome. So just to get us started, because I ask all my guests this question, because hey, it's the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast. And so everyone always has sort of like a slightly different definition on this, a different take. And so I always ask everybody, what does positive leadership mean to you? So for you, Orin, what does it mean to you personally?
So to me, it's about providing a vision that inspires others to contribute uniquely to improving the world.
I love that. Okay, so it's about a leader having that like big picture vision. Is that where we're at? And then from there, everything flows from that. Is that what you mean? Like the day-to-day kind of, the normal decisions and strategies and whatnot that we have to do?
So I define a leader as a visionary. Mm-hmm. So this is someone who is providing vision for people, and the followers of a leader are often helping to execute on that vision. But the optimal situation is when, the followers are contributing uniquely to the execution. Yeah. And when they find a vision that they can sink their efforts into, that they can sink their teeth into, and they put their efforts in, but they're not just contributing, And it's not just an inspiring vision, but they understand based on the relationship between their skills, strengths, unique contributions, and the execution of the vision, and how the world becomes better. And a positive leader, meets at the nexus of those things and makes it happen. And often it's through the vision, the inspiration that they provide. And there are many different ways of being that kind of leader. But however they do it, they offer this vision. People are able to, through their execution upon that vision, make the world better, but also in such a way, the execution occurs in such a way that it's a unique contribution. You feel like I'm doing something that nobody else could do right now.
I absolutely love that. And thank you for placing that emphasis, for underscoring your use of the word uniquely in your definition. Because I'll admit, I think I kind of glossed over that. And you make such a great point about, support, helping people create that vision so that, the people that work for you and work alongside you, as you said, can uniquely contribute, right? And so as leaders, we need to recognize that people do have unique contributions, right? Because I think it's really easy to sometimes just kind of pigeonhole people and, expect people to sort of, well, they're in that department and they all do this thing, or some combination of this thing and that thing. But in fact, every single person in front of you in your organization has a set of unique strengths and gifts, and they can, in their own unique way, contribute to the goals, the vision, the mission of the organization. So that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that and for really placing the emphasis on the unique aspect of that.
It's something I think is very important for all of us, self-actualization and self-transcendence, going beyond that. That when we are self-actualizing, we often do it through work, by the way, or other roles that we take in life. When we're working with leaders, or even when we are the leader, to be able to have that uniqueness expressed is how we fulfill that potential and how we go beyond ourselves to create something and leave that legacy behind to create something that's going to extend beyond our lives. That self-transcendence is a very important thing. And it's really what moves us on. For many of us, it's what gets us up in the morning every day.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you mentioned a term, and it was in your bio that I shared. You call yourself a self-actualization. Apparently, I have trouble pronouncing that. Self-actualization engineer. And that is an unusual title. I don't think I've met anyone who carries that title. So tell us more about that. Like, first of all, what does it mean to self-actualize? Let's define that. And then what does it mean for you to be an engineer of that? Like, unpack your work a little bit for us.
Sure, totally. So first of all, self-actualization, there are a lot of different ways of operationalizing that. I think of it mostly as the fulfillment of your potential. And I'm fully cognizant of the fact that by creating by offering a definition like that, I'm sort of punting on the definition, because potential is also a very nice, fluffy, fuzzy term that can go in a lot of ways. But I also think that when people have potential, that can be viewed in a lot of different ways. It's something that I was putting out in my TEDx talk about the visions that we have, the vision that other people have for us, the vision that we have for ourselves. These are different views on our potential and how we can fulfill it, or what we could be, or how we do develop that uniqueness through our life experiences, through the roads that we walk. And each of those things develops, alters our potential, but also helps us fulfill it. So the idea is that, it's making the most of what happens to us, of what we naturally have, of what comes to us. And each of these things we can all fall under this rubric of potential, quote unquote, and that we can take that potential, we can turn it into a reality. But again, as Maslow pointed out, self-actualization is not so much a level, so much as it is an upward spiral that you hit. Right. So even as you fulfill that potential, the very act of fulfilling that potential actually increases your potential. And so it's not something you really quite hit, but that you develop and expand, and in some cases alter your potential through different experiences that you have, through different events that occur in your life that may change what you can offer. And sometimes it changes what you can offer because it changes the context. And it may even change what you think you can best offer at that time. the world may change and you may see a new niche to fill that you may never have before. And many of us, as we're living longer, some of us, this may happen to us multiple times, which is both terrifying and exciting all at the same time.
Right.
Now, engineering, we think of engineering, people who analyze mechanisms and people who are able to see the components of a piece, understand how they work and interact with one another, and can use that to alter or improve the system. And I definitely see psychology as a form of engineering, human engineering. My background includes neuroscience, a bit of computer science, and even a little bit of engineering. And I really saw that connection, the way that we model human behavior, human existence, human capacities. We are psychologists in a certain sense. We are human engineers. And my focus is trying to understand the algorithms, the components, the mechanisms of self-actualization, and hopefully work those, tweak those, help people to basically look under the hood of the self-actualization mechanism. And more importantly, because it's going to be different for every person, hopefully provide some kind of guideline for when people look under their own hood to see the mechanisms in there, that they'll have some idea of how they work and what's powering and running their engine, how to fuel it, how to tweak it, how to get better performance out of it, however they define better performance.
Yeah. I mean, again, I love your definition. And I mean, so much of that requires some self-awareness. Like, as you said, help people get under the hood and actually know what's there that they can use, the tools that they have, the mechanisms that are available. And I mean, I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but in my mind, Orin, one of those mechanisms that can, help you move in that direction of self-actualization and reaching or fulfilling or moving towards your potential is this idea of flow, which is sometimes also called being in the zone. If you're listening and you're not familiar with that, being in the zone, being in flow, they're very similar. It's essentially a place where we just become so absorbed by whatever it is we're doing that we lose track of time. And we've all had these experiences, right? Like, it could be that you're playing sport. It could be that you're absorbed in your writing. It could be that, if you're geeking out like I do with numbers, you're immersed in some kind of research or data analysis or something. But you look up and you're like, seriously? Like 2 hours has gone by? What happened? Because you're just so completely absorbed in what you're doing. And so that's the idea of flow. And it's one of my favorite topics because, like, in my mind, at least, it connects. It is one of those mechanisms that, like, if we can find what puts us in flow, particularly in a work context, very often, if we can do more of that, we are in effect self-actualizing because we're tapping into our greatest strengths and our gifts when we're in that place. I mean, I don't know if you feel differently. Like, tell me about that, because you've also done a ton of research on flow. So let's unpack this a little bit.
Sure. So I think that flow is often a good marker for what to look at.
Okay.
And so, in that sense, I'm not entirely clear on the relationship between flow and self-actualization. I'm not sure that anybody is. But one thing I would say for sure is that when you experience flow, that tells you something about what you enjoy, what you love, what you're intrinsically motivated to do.
Yep.
And that's not always the direct indicator of self-actualization or of your path or of your potential or anything along those lines. But it's sort of like, a big honking flag waving at you very vigorously saying, pay attention to this. And you may have to spend time exploring how and why you experience flow when you're engaged in a particular activity. But I think that it's a great start. And often when people have no idea where to start about understanding their potential or understanding themselves, well, understanding themselves is something different, but understanding their potential, if they are able to understand where they find flow, if they find flow, and not everybody does, but those who do, often that's a good place to start for understanding what potential you have, because in a very real sense, that tells you what you want to do. Because I think the flow is more than the absorption experience you talked about. it's often a situation, not only do we have that absorption, not only do we have the time distortion, but it's often something that we're intrinsically motivated to do. We want to do it, and we want to do the activity for its own sake. We love doing it.
Yep.
And so, as I like to say, because it just sounds funny to say, the climber climbs to climb.
Yep.
And I mean, yes, the nominal goal is getting to the top, but you just want to be on the climbing space. And that's what you want to do. And I'm obviously not a climber, but it's what you do. And you want to just keep doing it for its own sake. I'm a dancer, not a climber. And as a dancer, like, I just want to be dancing. I mean, yeah, obviously I want to be, I want to have a successful dance, but I love the experience, and I just want to be, and I do ballroom dancing, social ballroom dancing. So there's a lot of partners, a lot of improv. I just want to be with the partner. Like, when you have a good partner, you know what? It doesn't matter what mistakes, to me, mistakes are when, you and your partner have disconnected somehow. Other than that, as long as I'm connected to my partner for the whole dance, it's a great dance.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah. So essentially, this idea that
dance, but we do.
yeah, it's not just about the means to an end. It's like valued in and of itself. Like, I place value on the activity itself. Yes, it might get me, to a point, to a goal, to an achievement, but I'm doing it just because I value this particular activity. Like, my brain loves it, or my body loves it, if you're doing something physical. But it's that idea that it's not just a means to an end. Like, it's just, like you said, I love doing this thing.
And it also taught me personally, that how much I love not just improvising, but improvising with another person. And that is something that is near and dear to me, and that I love, and that I need to do. And I found that when I get to do that in my work, I am so much happier in my work, whether I'm doing research, or whether I'm teaching, or whether I'm consulting or giving workshops. Knowing that there are other people in there that I can riff off of makes it great.
How cool. So you've got two things, and this is the important thing about flow, because you can find it in various aspects of your life, right? So you talked about it in the context of dancing, which is, I don't think you're a professional dancer, right? It's recreational. Maybe you're competing, but it's not what you do for a living, right? Is it fair to say that?
I have done some paid dance teaching, not much,
Ooh.
but I actually have. I was paid occasionally to teach, and I generally don't. It's not something that is important to me to do, and I don't want to make a career of it. Yep. And I know many better dancers who are much better teachers to send people to them.
Gotcha. So it's largely in that recreational part of your life, right? But then this idea of improvised collaboration that you experienced in dance, you find that you actually appreciate that in your work. So when you come to do what is your, bread and butter, for want of a better word, right? You're consulting and you're interacting with clients, you're enjoying that active improvisation, improvised collaboration there too. So you've actually found almost like this common thread of flow between work and recreation that's kind of flowing through your life, huh?
Yeah. And the thing is, one of the other places where I find flow is when I'm coding. Especially when I'm doing like analysis, like if I'm doing data analysis, I can get really lost in that. And it's something that's totally different. And it's a totally different experience for me, especially because it's a solo one. But what I did find is that still, I love the mystery of like trying to improvise, of trying to understand the mechanisms when I don't necessarily know what's going on, when I'm trying to look under the hood. And like, again, that's something I learned about myself. And I offer that up as an example of a process that a person could go through when they're trying to understand where their potential may lie. Part of that clue may be, what do you like to do, and why do you like to do it?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's really interesting to me, because you said at the beginning, when you were kind of defining flow a little bit, you were saying, hey, it's like this honking red flag to tell you, do more of this, you like this, do more of this. But I got to tell you, I run into so many clients who are like, oh yeah, I suppose I do like doing that. Like, they really have to think about what puts them in flow. Like, they have to really kind of observe themselves for several days. Like, I actually have them keep a little diary, like, what put you in flow, what didn't put you in flow. Like, let's start finding a pattern, because a lot of people really aren't seeing the flag. It is a big honking flag, but most people aren't seeing it. So do you have any insights in terms of, how do people get more in touch with what puts them in flow? And I guess part two of that question is, if I'm not experiencing flow at work, I'm only experiencing it outside of work. Is there a way for me to find more flow in work and have this, awesome experience in my work somehow?
So I think part of it is, that temet noske thing, know thyself.
Mhm.
And along those lines, I find that people run into this challenge a lot because they haven't really thought about what flow is. They often think of flow as just some kind of state experience that they just go into, or that they're either in it or they're not.
Mhm.
And
Right.
that's conflating flow, and that's conflating flow and absorption. I find a lot of people do that like when you can get absorbed in a task that you totally don't like. Believe it or not, it's a funny thing. But people have the absorptive experience, and then they're like, "Yeah, that must have been flow." No, it's not actually. And like I'm sure you're also having to explain this to clients all the time. Like, well, I got lost in this task, so was that flow? No, well, I'm sure you're telling them like, no, it wasn't. Like, it's more than that. Like, was it a positive
Right.
experience? And the thing that is a real challenge is that often flow is not a positive experience in the moment. I mean, if you think about it,
Right.
a flow experience, right, is a situation where people are applying above average skill relative to their own average
Mhm.
to an above average challenge. And again, that's relative to their own average. So this means you are struggling. And I mean, if you think about it, any moment in which you're struggling, I'm not sure that that's always so fun.
Right.
And and maybe the context around it feels good, but like, for instance, for those who experience gym high, right, when you're running a workout and you're putting in those last few reps and you're like dying trying to put in those last reps, you're like, and you're straining and you're screaming and you're struggling. You don't, like, if I stop you at that moment and be like, how do you feel right now? You'd be like, I don't feel good. This does not feel good. You're in
Right.
pain. But that moment you feel afterwards, that
Yep.
elated moment right
Yep.
after that, when you did, you thought you could only do 50 reps and you pull out 51.
Yep.
And oh my God, that amazing feeling. And you struggled and you strained and you were in so much pain, but you put up that 51st rep and you feel like that little moment where you feel like you could take on the world right now. You
Right.
feel elated, invincible. That's the moment I tell people to look for.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a
That
great
moment when you thought you had only 50 reps in you, you put up 51, and that elation, go look for that. Because that's the big honking red flag when you feel like you totally did it and you're so glad you did all that stuff.
Yeah. That's a terrific analogy, by the way, because I think all of us in one way or another have had that experience of, like, it's just so hard in the workout or whatever we're doing. But after the fact, we're like, yes, it's so fulfilling, right? I mean, so flow is this, it's not like this hedonistic happiness of like, yeah, I'm having a great time, it's a party. But it's more like this eudaimonic happiness, which is like the fulfilled life, feeling joyful. And normally that's after the fact, like feeling fulfilled, content, like you said, can take on the world. It's more of that angle on it. So how do, I mean, if people aren't experiencing flow in their work, is there a way for them to find it or to cultivate it in their work? Orin, have you come across any of that in your work or in your research?
Yeah, a lot. And one of the things that people can do is look for the challenge.
Hmm.
There are two keys to this, I find. Number one is look for the challenge. And it's not always obvious, especially for people who are in jobs that are much more algorithmic and not heuristic. It can be hard to find the challenge. It can be hard to invent the challenge.
Yep.
So you often have to. The other thing to look for is the meaning. Some people find that their work, doesn't have the meaning, and when it doesn't have meaning, it's very hard to make a good experience out of it. So
Hmm.
I often recommend, like, go look for the meaning
Hmm.
and go look for the challenge. And if neither of those things is happening, it may just be that your work environment is not necessarily conducive to flow, and that's okay. I mean, it's not a great situation, but also two things. Number one, it might be time to move to another job. But if not, if that's not an option for you, there are always other places to find flow. And if you
Hmm.
can't make challenge, by the way, it's worthwhile to go seek out advice on how to make the challenge, because the research is clear that you can turn any activity into a flow activity. And I remember when I studied with Csikszentmihalyi, he actually challenged us to that.
Yep.
Like, where can you find flow? And it's a challenge to myself, because I don't always enjoy washing dishes as a chore. I was like, can I get a flow experience out of washing dishes? And the answer was kind of. It was kind of hard, but the trick was looking for the challenge in washing the
Yep.
dishes. And often we talk about people who are autotelic personalities, people who can figure out how to turn an activity into something worth doing for its own sake. And they're often connecting it to their skills or to their growth, which is another way to look for it. Look for, how you can level up, or how you can grow, or how you can use a new skill or a different skill, or to do things in a different way.
Mhm.
Those are usually indicators. And I find that most people, as they run through that list of options, they're often able to find flow, or they're able to, have somebody give them feedback. Sometimes we're too close to something to be able to see it. But what, like if one of your clients were to come to you and you could run them through that,
Right.
that you might be able to like point out to them, well, what about here? Like, as you ask them these questions, they're talking about the work. You might say, well, what about there? Can you find a challenge there? Can you find meaning there? Can you find a place to level up there?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and you make a great point about meaning. And as you were mentioning the washing the dishes and making any activity have a challenge, I was thinking about last year when we were in like full on lockdown, we couldn't have our cleaner come over, and I had to clean the house. Woe is me, right? I say that tongue in cheek. Obviously, I understand that lots of people clean their own houses. Okay, I'm joking when I say this, but it is not my favorite activity in the world at all. And I am spoiled because we have the cleaner, and I had to clean the house for months. And at first I was like, oh no, I cannot face this. And over time, I kind of created challenges. Could I do it faster? Could I do it better? Maybe I should focus on one room more and like give certain rooms deep cleans. I mean, I kind of sort of made it a little game and a challenge for myself. And then lo and behold, I find that when I was cleaning, I actually was kind of in this flow-like state, which was shocking to me because I literally have to be like dragged kicking and screaming to clean my own house. So I take your suggestion very personally there, and I could see how I actually did that without realizing I actually did that for myself and created flow out of a not, for me anyway, good situation.
We always have room to make things fun.
Yeah.
And that's right out of Mary Poppins, I admit. But it's sort of like, oh, you find the fun and snap the job's a game. Now, I may not quite share Mary Poppins' optimism on this, but the idea, the principle is reasonably sound, within
Right.
limits. All analogies break down if you look closely enough. But
Yeah, totally. So hook this back into the workplace for us a little bit though. So like if I'm a leader, should I personally be looking to find more opportunities for flow in my work? Should I be encouraging the people who work for me in my department or my organization to do that? Like how do you sort of encourage it at the work level?
So I would say yes to all of those. I mean, like having leaders experience flow, it's great. Having the people who work with you experience flow in their tasks, also great. And flow in that sense, flow is the optimal experience. So flow is a great thing to experience. One thing I always caution leaders is you can't be in flow all the time, and neither can your employees. So like, you know, have respect for that fact, but and also, by the way, flow takes a lot of energy. I mean, if you think about like what our flow experiences are, we're putting above average skill to above average challenge. That kind of effort, we can't sustain that all day.
Hmm.
We just can't. But to
Right.
be able to get that, yeah, we want that, because often those are the times when we're giving our best performances, or when we're being the most creative and really putting incredible knowledge out there. So I think I think that is a great thing to go for.
Awesome. So and that's what I was going to ask you. Like, so when you say it's great for leaders and their teams to do this, you're talking about some of those outcomes that you just mentioned there, like better performance, more creativity, doing your best work. That's what you mean by, yeah, it's really great for that to happen.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And how does, I have to imagine also there's a connection, right, between flow and employee engagement, right? Like having your employees really like be engaged in their work and want to come to work today. Have you seen connections there too?
We've seen them, but both flow and employee engagement are somewhat fuzzier constructs and harder to
Mhm.
really define and pin down.
Yeah.
And so it's a correlative relationship. And I mean, first of all, you can have either without the other. And that's pretty well that's pretty clear. You can have flow without the employee engagement, and you can have employee engagement without the flow activity, because I mean, I'm just going to create the operating definition of employee engagement to say
Hmm.
that it is the willingness to put discretionary effort towards a job in a way that is meaningful to you and that often correlates with the meaning of the job.
Hmm. Okay.
But I mean, we can put in that discretionary effort. We can find meaning in our jobs without finding the flow. And, you know, we can create flow and find ways to experience flow in a job that we despise, when we're working for a person that we despise, when we can't wait to clock out. It's like, look, I'm stuck here 9 to 5, but like, look, I don't like, it doesn't have to be a miserable 9 to 5. You know, I think my boss is, you know, horrible person. And I think my work is the most meaningless drudge, but, you know, but like, I don't have to sit here and be miserable all day. I can go find my own flow, you know, as best I can. And I'll look forward to that part of my day where I'm able to turn my work into a flow experience. And then when I go home, I can grumble about it all the way home. And by the
Here's
way,
hoping
those
that
kinds of people, if they're not engaged, they're not
right,
going to do one iota past what their job description says. And
right.
yeah, that should worry you, but still, you know.
So you can have one without the other. So I guess the sweet spot is trying to find both then. It's sort of like the Venn diagram, right? It's like that sweet spot of overlapping. Like that's the holy grail is, we want the flow and we want the employee engagement as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So just as we sort of come to closing here, I mean, if people are listening and they're really intrigued about this idea of flow, they're like, we get it. I understand it. I get what you're saying about it and some of the benefits. Like, what advice do you have for them if they're looking to kind of cultivate more flow in their life, and particularly in the workplace? Like, do you have some specific, pointers for them or specific advice?
So I think, you know, beyond what I already said was, you know, look for challenge, look for meaning, look for opportunities to grow. What I would also point out is, if you know your skills and you know your strengths, look for opportunities to use them to their fullest, because
Mhm.
that's another route that often leads to flow, but it's often more indirect.
Mhm.
Not always, but it's especially with strengths, they require context, and context is also something that matters. And that's one of the things that, particularly my specific research has looked a little bit at the contexts that are not conducive to a flow experience. And that's not just the environment in which you find yourself, but also taking stock of your own situation.
Mhm.
Like, what mood are you in? What level of energy do you have? Are you in a good position? What does your environment look like? So look at yourself, look at your environments. Are you creating an environment that is more or less conducive to flow?
Right. That is a great point. That is a fantastic point. I mean, one of the things that puts me in flow is writing, but I don't even try to do that after 11 a.m. in the morning. Writing for me happens first thing in the morning, before the phone starts ringing, before the energy of the day heps up. It's like that is when I can really be in flow and write to my best ability. After that window of early morning, then it's like, no, I'm not even trying because I just know it won't happen. It's just, so, going back to your know yourself, it's like you have to understand, like, when am I, in that place where I want to give it all? I want to be totally focused.
Mhm.
I want to be absorbed. I want to be in this flow state versus, yeah, it's probably not going to happen, once the afternoon hits and I've got to have this meeting and that meeting. And, life becomes a bit more disjointed, right? So
Mhm.
you raise a great point there about considering the context, not just of your environment, but you yourself as well, right? Like taking it all into account. Like,
Yeah.
am I setting myself up for a successful flow experience, or if I tried it right now, would it just be a colossal disaster because I'm
Mhm.
just not in the right mindset? There's too much going on, whatever it is, right?
And I think two more things I would want to add to that. One is that leaders as the people who create the context, they can be mindful of what context they're creating. And the other thing that I would add is that it helps us a lot more if we think of flow not as a state, but as a broader experience. Now, the early research on flow really focused on the trance-like aspect of the flow experience, but often people get stuck in that and they end up not thinking about the other aspects of flow. So if you think and when we think about a flow as a state is a very, very concrete thing. It's like it's got very clear boundaries. It's you're in it or you're not in it. But the research on flow suggests that flow is actually a very complex and unfolding experience, and it unfolds in real time. We go in, we go out, this aspect of it is stronger, this aspect of it is weaker, and we still don't understand how that goes, but we look back on it in retrospect and we see a net flow experience.
Right.
And the other big mistake that people make when they think of flow as a state, even if it is, but that the idea that flow could be triggered, which it can't. You can't trigger flow, and like that's silly. I'm sorry to say, but that's just silly.
Right.
And I say this as a hypnotist who, your post-hypnotic suggestions, all that jazz, like that's what I think about with triggering. But you can't make a post-hypnotic suggestion to put somebody in flow. Flow is an autotelic experience. You can't just say, when I snap my fingers, you will be intrinsically motivated. It just doesn't work that way.
Boy,
and when I snap my fingers, you will be in exactly a position where you can feel intrinsically motivated. No.
Wouldn't it be awesome if you could, though?
It would, but we can't. So, and for us not to think of it that way, because also that, and when we do that, if we think of flow that way, we end up finding ourselves in positions where we're not necessarily meeting our own expectations or our own thought about like what kind of flow we can have and get disappointed. Right. But the fact of the matter is, we shouldn't be disappointed. We need to take all those factors into account and look at it as a much broader experience. Yeah. And I think that we get more opportunities to be successful that way.
Wise advice. Amen to that. Thank you, Orin. This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for joining the Positive Leadership Movement today. And we literally, barely even scratched the surface. And I think this episode's actually one that people are going to want to listen to more than once, because you had so many little gems and insights that were scattered in there. So I know our listeners are going to want more of you. So how can they get in touch with you? How can they connect with you further? And I think you also have a cool offer to share too, right?
Sure. So I run the Quality of Life Laboratory, and my website is www.qllab.org. So qllab.org. Check it out. There's a way to contact me. People can follow me on both Twitter and Medium. It's Dr. Orin Davis, and Orin is spelled Orin. That's always a challenge for people. So it's DrOrinDavis, and that's my username on both Twitter as well as Medium. I write blog posts about this stuff, and I very much enjoy it, tweet about it sometimes. So people are welcome to find me there. My contact information can be found through my website, but it's odavis@qllab.org, and people are welcome to get in touch. And the offer is that, when people are looking for consulting, coaching, advisory services, I always give a free consultation on that, because I always want to make sure that I can actually do something useful before I charge you money.
I like that way of operating. That's full of integrity. Very nice. And so for your free consultation, how would people reach out to you for that, or how would they take you up on that offer, Orin?
Also by email. Just shoot me an email. Just tell me what you're looking for, and I'll be happy to talk with folks.
Awesome. I think you froze for a moment there, but you came back in just as you were saying your email. So it was perfect timing. If you're saying something else, it's okay. We got the main gist. So just to email you for that. Awesome.
It was just reach out to me, odavis@qllab.org, and ask for the consultation. I'm happy to talk to folks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure having Orin on the show. And of course, I want to thank you, our listeners, for joining for this episode. I hope you got value out of it. I hope that you're thinking about flow experiences and how you can maybe create more of them, or maybe just experience it more frequently. There's lots of different ways that you can create flow in your life. That's sort of the big message coming out of today, and how beneficial it is for you, both yourself as a leader and also for your team. If you have questions about this week's episode, or if you have positive leadership stories you want to share, you can always write to me at questions@positiveleadershipmovement.com. I always love to hear from you. And I have an honor system where I respond to every single email. I'm not kidding. I go through them all. I read every single one of them and I respond. So don't feel like if you email me there, it's going into some random, email box that gets checked once, every 20 years. No, I do check it. I do respond. So reach out to me at questions@positiveleadershipmovement.com. All right, that's it. That's a wrap for this week's episode. This is Alex Bratty signing out and thanking you for being part of the positive leadership movement and inspiring me to do what I do every single day.
Make sure you subscribe to the show. If you like this episode, please rate and review. If you want to get more from Alex, check out Happiness at Work, where she provides leaders with a proven path to cultivate a positive work culture that increases performance, productivity, and profitability. Go to happinessatworknow.com. Join us next week and harness the power of positive leadership for your organization.